Oh, the madness. It has begun. Michigan State right in the middle of it all. But we start today on the Suburban Ford 7 Sports Cave talking about those guys, the Tigers. I am Brad Galley alongside Yahoo Sports columnist Dan Wetzel. Hear him every morning on WDFN and Michigan play-by-play for basketball, Matt Shepard. Busy time. I know you drove through last night from Milwaukee. I did the same thing. By the way, my secret weapon of making it through, can we pull this up on the iPad? Of my secret weapon of how I made it through the night? Disconnected. Good. It was Michael Jordan's secret stuff from Space Jam.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
really? So you're watching a movie while you're driving?
Oh, that's the
healthy.
Drink that I made it through.
Are you sober right now?
It's just water, but Michael didn't tell me. Breaking news just about an hour ago, Max Scherzer in negotiations with the Tigers to try to keep him here in Detroit past the $15 million he's owed this year in arbitration. And all of a sudden, the Tigers released a statement saying, done. He's rejected our substantial offer, and so now he'll go into next summer or next winter as a free agent. Your immediate reactions?
Negotiations are off until after the season, according to both parties here. I think that what's substantial? I mean, we're talking it's got to be at least $20+ million a season. Verlander got 180 over 7. Was it something in that point? Is that not enough for Max Scherzer? Should the Tigers? I mean, how far away are they here? I think that's really the issue here. But that's a lot of money, and that's Scherzer, who 3 seasons ago had a 4.43 ERA, had a 3.74 2 years ago, gambling a lot of money on this season.
Yeah, but he's gotten better every year. What's the floor? Is it Homer Bailey? Is it CC Sabathia? Is it Zach Greinke? Because if it's Zach Greinke, Max Scherzer and his agents, Boris, has a legitimate gripe. They have a legitimate floor right there to say, I'm as good as this guy. He won a Cy Young. He's gotten better every single year. He's a starting pitcher in the All-Star game. He is arguably 1B. He's an ace on this team and would be an ace on just about anybody else. He's got that window of opportunity. We constantly ask our athletes, why don't you sign one-year deals? Why don't you prove it to me every year? Max Scherzer's kind of taken that risk now, isn't he? He's basically said, I'm going to be as good as 21-3, sub-1 whip, and I'm going to get it done, and I'll show you.
Scott Boras is his agent, who famously takes all of his clients, for the most part, into free agency. So he doesn't like negotiating. The Tigers have said they tried, they threw everything at him. He didn't like it. But he is banking a lot on one season, and sure, he won the Cy Young, but he'd be the first guy to tell us last year, every time we were in that locker room, hey, I get a lot of run support. This is the team. This is the team. I'm in the mix of a great year.
But he won't get that run support this year. It's not the same run support.
It won't happen. With all the injuries they've gotten and trading away Prince, it's a different story.
No doubt.
Absolutely. And no, but I agree. It's you got to applaud a guy who sits there saying, he's not saying, I'm not signing with the Tigers. They could negotiate after the season. Right. The money could be there or maybe not. He's putting it all on himself, and I think you got to respect that. Generally, I look at this stuff and say, hey, look, the Tigers should pay more. Mike Ilitch needs a World Series. They got billions of dollars. They just got a great deal out of the city of Detroit and the state of Michigan for a new stadium. It's not like these people are hurting. What's X number more dollars? Why not go for broke? But it doesn't risk this season for the Tigers. They're going to get a motivated Max Scherzer for the year. Again, I want to know what's substantial. Did they lowball him? Is it close to Verlander money? Who's being unreasonable here? And why, there's 8 more days. We're not at opening day. How far away are you here?
But the Tigers feel like it's their self-imposed deadline. So maybe
they said the deadline was Thursday, right?
So they've reached that point in the discussions where they feel like maybe it's time for us to break away a little bit, and I can respect that too. Remember this. Dave Dombrowski said we were looking for financial flexibility when Prince Fielder was sent away on the trade to Texas. This is part of the financial flexibility, along with Cabrera. How many 20+ million players can this Tigers organization have? Fielder leaves with 20+ million. You think Scherzer takes that spot? Do you pay him more than Justin Verlander? You can't do that.
Can't do it. And we want your opinion. As always, we've got our phones out. We've got the iPad out that will be connected at some point. We want to know what you're thinking about this because we've already had a bunch of people weigh in on Twitter. Use the hashtag 7SportsCave. People are already saying trade Max.
Oh.
We'll get into that. We'll discuss that. We'll get their opinions.
Pump the brakes.
We do want to hear from you out there, so stay interactive with us. Coming up in the show, we're going to put your tweets on TV, so keep it pumping. Hashtag 7SportsCave.
Why does that always happen, by the way? People feel like you're dissing my city, so trade him right away. Marian Hossa came here on a 1-year deal. Then he left as a free agent and everybody booed him. He rolled the dice too with our city, with our team. Max Scherzer doesn't like what he thinks he's getting, or the Tigers feel like there's no cooperation there. So they've put the deadline out there. Now they say the talks are off. People want to trade him. I want to keep good players. And Ndamukong Suh's going through the same thing. Matt Stafford was going, I want good players. Let me have them, and I think I'll find a way to make it work.
Yeah, it's like creating a bad breakup. Just, like what look, again, he's a motivated, nobody's got more on the line than Max Scherzer. He must have turned down $120 to $150 million guaranteed. It's a pitcher. Their arms could go at any point. The guy's gambling on himself. I get it. The money is so abstract that it's impossible to understand when you sit there. I'm insulted. I'm only making 20. What was the NBA player said? I got to feed my kids on $8 million a year. The
Kenny
numbers
Anderson.
are so ridiculous that you throw them out.
Unless the offer was Clayton Kershaw-esque. If it was 7 years, $215 million, and he said no to that,
that's what I want to know.
Then that's ridiculous. But we don't know yet, so why overreact?
It's easy to sit there and say, look, what's the difference between $215 and $220 million? Until you're staring and saying, I don't want the $5 million. Until I'm in that, I'd like to have that decision come my way someday.
Well, you do. Yahoo just bumped you up
absolutely.
Let's get on. Let's get to. I'm going to grab a hat over here. This split the difference. Michigan State.
Oh, wow. Neat
Yeah,
hat.
you like that?
Yeah, I do. I like it a lot.
Sewn in-house, so we keep everyone happy
I hope they're not selling that. That hat
I
is.
did not. Okay, what impressed
Anybody
me
who
most,
wears that hat should get it kicked in the shins.
What if you've got a kid that
Pick a
goes to
side.
both schools?
Pick a side.
Pick sides.
I've got a neighbor who had 2 go to Michigan and 1 go to State. He's wearing that type of hat.
All right, they've got a tough time right now because both teams advanced to the Sweet 16 last night. What impressed me the most about both of these schools, at any point in that game, I never thought Texas was going to win, and I never thought Harvard was going to win. Even when Harvard took the lead late in the game, both of these teams had control, and they had the will. And what impressed me most, and I think you saw it too, at least being there, Texas was gassed right from the get-go.
Well, Michigan was gassed a little bit, too. We had 8 minutes without a timeout. Glenn Robinson was leaning over a little bit, but Michigan is in very good shape. Their strength and conditioning coach, John Sanderson, does a wonderful job day in and day out with these guys. And John Beeline makes sure they get the right amount of rest. Look, Texas is a really big club. And those are the teams that everybody assumes Michigan has problems with. I don't care how many times Michigan can prove you wrong. Florida State, Iowa, Wisconsin, Michigan State, they beat some of those big teams, and yet people just don't want to believe it. They think they're a finesse team. Michigan State is a club that, they're going to have hard problems with teams that cut really hard. Michigan State has so much depth, it's unbelievable. Both these teams are 2 of the best teams in the entire nation. We've seen them play in the Big Ten all season long, so we found their warts. We think that, we know what is going to beat this team. Guess what? You go outside the Big Ten, it's really hard to beat these 2 clubs. That's why they're under the Sweet 16.
It seems like people forget that Michigan can shoot on the outside when they have size.
Absolutely.
They forget to defend them. 14 threes last night. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. And Beeline switching up the defenses on it. It was a tremendous performance by Michigan. And Michigan State, this is a veteran team. This is Tom Izzo, the whole thing. Harvard makes its run. They get this big dunk. Must have been the greatest play in Harvard basketball history. I mean, they're rolling. They get Applin back in there. Everything settles down. They just respond.
They don't panic. Neither team
panics.
panics.
Yeah.
Look, we know this. We've watched enough college basketball. Everybody at home has too. Teams are going to go on runs. You're in this tournament because you're a pretty good club, right? Arizona State was down 18 the other night. They made a run at Texas, and the difference was the Longhorns won by 2. Both Michigan and Michigan State, because of their coaching staff and because of their players being in this situation before, they know there's going to be runs. The question isn't, oh my gosh, how do you stop it? It's how do you handle it? And both teams mentally and physically handle it beautifully.
Which is really interesting because the biggest thing that sticks out for me with Michigan, half of these guys that are impact players were sitting on the bench for most of the tournament run last year. Karis LeVert was a skinny little kid that looked out of place last year, and he's taken over games. Glenn Robinson, give or take a few bad games this season,
he's been really good.
Has been so solid and has taken over. And then on the other side, Gary Harris with Michigan State, last year when they lose to Duke, comes out and says, I'm not ready to go to the draft. I thought I was, and I'm not ready. Last night, Mr. Clutch. It was fantastic.
Yeah, Jabari Parker did the same thing with Duke when they lost to Mercer. I think my career is incomplete. Gary Harris felt the same way.
Yeah. And also, Beeline, I think, is among the best in the country at developing talent, getting guys better in practice. You see it. If you could have said they're going to lose McGarry and they're going to be here rolling into the Sweet 16, no one would buy it.
Right.
And here's with Izzo in Michigan State. All the injuries this year. That's a curse during the season. But a lot of guys got to play and got to play bigger roles than they would have if you just have the same starting 5. A lot of depth and confidence in that crew.
And they still competed. Whether they won or not, they still competed in a lot of the games without the bulk of their talent. What else John Beeline does, I think, is his guys get better every single day. Derek Walton, from the first game of the year, and even in Puerto Rico against Charlotte and so on and so forth, to now, it's night and day. He is so confident. Morgan, well, remember, they shared a Big Ten championship with Jordan Morgan. He's a guy who might have been on the scout team if McGarry hadn't gotten hurt.
Without a doubt.
Karis LeVert averaged 2 points per game last year. Nick Stauskas averaged 8.7 points per game in the NCAA tournament this year. This year, he's one of those guys that everybody's pointing at that he's the key to their success.
Rob, take this for me. We're going to move on. We want to hear from you. How far do these two teams go? What's the ceiling for these groups? Because right now, they look like two of the best teams in this tournament. We're going to get to that as we come back. We're going to take your tweets on air. Use the hashtag 7SportsCave. We've got Dan, Matt, and I here. Welcome back inside a busy week, as always, in this great sports town. So many things for you to weigh in on, and you're doing it right now. Keep weighing in. Use the hashtag 7SportsCave on Twitter. I'm Brad Galley with Dan Wetzel, Matt Shepard. Mike Foss is another member of our team in the control room monitoring what's going on. Mike, you got a fancy headset. What can you see on your computer?
That's right. I'm seeing a lot of reaction on this Scherzer thing. By the way, Dan, it was Latrell Sprewell who said he had to feed his kids. Wanted to throw that out there. Obviously, a lot of people, as you guys mentioned earlier, people are already saying trade Scherzer, but let's check in with what some of the other people are saying on Twitter. A lot of response. Tyson says, I get why Tigers fans want to trade Scherzer.
Mr. Tyson.
Mr. Tyson. Fans want loyal players representing their city, but it seems dumb to trade him. Garrett says, let Max weigh out his offers in free agency. He'll actually realize his net worth isn't what it actually is meant to be. He will take less. Joseph says, trade Scherzer at the deadline for some picks and potential prospects or subpar stars. He's had only one good legitimate year. Bill says, think Max not getting opening day start left a bad taste in his mouth after last season's performance. He deserved it. And Pete says, Max, I'm spent. Scherzer has a great season and now wants a long-term Verlander-sized contract. His arm won't last that long. A lot of reaction. Thanks, everybody, for checking in. Guys, back to you.
Pitcher contracts in baseball are weird. I mean, you look at historically the first few big ones. Mike Hampton's the one that sticks out to me.
Yep.
I mean, even CC Sabathia has had his ups and downs in New York. I don't know if you go long-term with a guy like this when you've already gotten Verlander and Sanchez.
What's long-term?
5 years? 6 years?
He's 29, so he can pitch in his mid-30s.
He's solid. I mean, he's proven it. My big thing.
They're one pitch away from.
They are.
You never know.
Yeah,
sports are
that's what
fickle.
you got to do.
You
That's
can
what
say that about every position.
Well, yeah,
though.
you can blow a knee out at doing anything.
The big thing for me, you put yourself in Max Scherzer's shoes. You look out with the best you can do, and I think you're putting it well throughout what we've talked about. He is putting this all on his own shoulders.
He's rolling the dice. He's betting on himself. Is what
Gambling
he's doing.
on himself. Right. Let's put it this way. Let's say today the Tigers announced they didn't have Max Scherzer. Let's say the Tigers today announced we just acquired the Cy Young Award winner for 1 year at $15.5 million, and maybe he likes it enough that he signs a long-term deal at the end of the year. Every single tweet would be full of, oh my goodness, we stole this guy. Yep. What a deal. This is great. No one would sit there and say, why'd they do that for 1 year? Trade him. Mm-hmm. Nobody would. It would be absolute celebration. That's what they got. They got a motivated guy for 1 year. We'll see what happens long term. Yeah. Would it be better if they were announcing we signed the guy for 5 years at $120 million or $100 million, whatever it was? Yeah, but that's just not how it's going to
be. It's not sports. Loyalty's not there from the team to the player all the time, so why should it be there from the player to the team? Look, people don't want to hear that, but it's true.
My favorite is when I want to trade him for potential draft picks. Okay, like who? I mean, what are you getting in return? You're giving up a proven commodity for something you hope will be Cameron Maben. Oh, we get a pick. Good. It'll be Matt Brunson, the former shortstop in Colorado, 10 years ago. Come on. I mean, you've got a guy here who's going to help your team win this season. You're without Doug Fister. You're losing guys at a Red Wing-like pace, it seems like, and you want to get rid of the Cy Young Award winner, a guy who each year has gotten better. Yeah. You think he's only proven it for one season? You're wrong. He's gotten better every single year.
When you get to that playoffs, which we're going to assume the Tigers can get to, and if they don't, then this whole season's a pretty good disaster. But you want to sit there and say, what's the strength of our chance? We got Verlander, we got Scherzer, we got pitching. We want to throw that out there. Right. It's even more valuable in the postseason than it is the regular season.
And he wants to prove it himself. You made a great point.
Also,
we agree with
innings. He eats innings, and you don't have Bruce Rondon.
He's
now.
A horse, right? Exactly.
Yeah, he is an absolute horse. And I don't know. Somebody had mentioned during the tweets there that his arm was not going to last that long. They said the same thing about Justin Verlander, okay, because of how hard he throws and because of how many pitches he throws. I need guys at the front end of my rotation who eat innings, and he does just that.
Yeah, absolutely. This time of year, everyone knows about sports. We sit here, we talk, we digest everything. Everyone's an expert, but do you really know what you're talking about? Another member of our team, Jeremy Johnson, went out on the streets and found people who he ended up realizing were pretenders.
Okay, thanks a lot. Hey, today we're here at the Troy Community Center just to see how well people know their sports terminologies, their phrases, and cliches. It's 3rd and long, the bases are loaded, and there's 1 penalty shot left. Ah! What does that even mean? Let's go. If I were to say the phrase bump and run coverage, what sport are we watching?
I have no idea. I've never heard that term before.
Bump and run. Wow.
Bump and run coverage, that would be basketball.
Okay, and what does that mean?
That means you set a pick for a guy, and the ball carrier rolls around and goes to hoop.
Kind of like pick and roll.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I said hook and ladder, what sport are we watching?
Hook and ladder.
Hook and ladder. Hook and ladder. Something to do with fishing?
If I said the phrase turkey, I got a turkey, and I'm excited about it, what sport are we watching?
You got a turkey?
I got a turkey.
I would think you'd be hunting.
Turkey. Thanksgiving Day football.
So if I say top shelf, he scored top shelf, what are we watching?
Top shelf.
No idea. Only heard that at the bar.
I don't have a clue. I'm always used to top shelf, like top shelf liquor or top shelf beer.
Ooh, that's a tough one.
If I said the phrase squeeze play, what sport would you be watching?
I could say football.
You could say football.
Right. Basketball.
You could say basketball.
Right. Squeeze play is when maybe they put a squeeze on a quarterback and it put more pressure.
Or like, kind of squeeze him.
Right, squeeze him.
And
Right.
then, like he's like so tense about it.
Yes.
He's ready to explode with pressure.
Right. He's under pressure.
Under pressure.
Right.
Yep. Squeeze play.
Oh, by the way, top shelf, hockey.
Yeah, but you're a little bit too late. Sorry, a little bit too late for that. We need the answers at the point when we ask the question. You know what I mean? There's no rollover of the answer. In Troy, Jeremy Johnson, 7 Sports Cave.
Okay, those guys don't know much about sports.
That's
I blame our
wanna
educational system.
I'd want to hang out with them, though. Yeah. They didn't play much
Top
about
shelf
the bar.
liquor. Yeah, they know all about the liquor.
The top shelf really bothered me. Did you know what a turkey was, though? Because I didn't.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, my wife calls me that, but I didn't know what a turkey was.
Set yourself up on that one.
Let's go over to our bar because we're going to go into our Fast 5 segments when we come back. We're still taking your tweets, so keep them flowing. #7SportsCave. We're going to head over here. 1 minute per topic, 5 topics. We're going Red Wings, Tigers. Is Steven Drew the next shortstop of Detroit? Big question on everyone's minds. This is the Suburban Ford 7 Sports Cave. Dig in. The Red Wings in the playoff picture, not exactly one in the same conversation when we started this past week. 3 of their 4 games before Monday were losses. But then all of a sudden, a hot streak. 3 games in a row. So the question as we enter our Fast 5 minutes, a minute each, topic, you get 30 seconds. Start the buzzer. Are they pretenders or contenders?
They're contenders, and anybody who thinks they're not hasn't been paying attention to this club enough. Now they're starting to play a lot better at home, and I think Mike Babcock might have done his best job ever. Gustav Nyquist has more goals than anybody else in the NHL since January 20th. He scored again last night. This team is starting to feel itself a little bit more, and I think one of the more underrated parts of this club has been the leadership of Nicholas Kronwall. He is in the same form of a guy like Nick Lidstrom, of a Steve Yzerman, of a Henrik Zetterberg. He leads quietly, but everybody in that room listens to him. I think they are contenders.
Agree, contenders. They got Nyquist is white hot. Jimmy Howard's playing better. You have terrific play on the special teams. 2 power play goals last night. They're killing late game penalties against Penguins and again last night. I wouldn't recommend that as a long-term strategy, but they're getting it done.
Yeah.
Team's playing a lot better, and yes, absolutely a contender. Why not? You know, they now have the 8th spot in the East. Right. You get in there and you get Howard playing really well. Anything's possible.
They hang on to that spot by the skin of their teeth today. Another big one against Minnesota. That game against Pittsburgh in the midst of all this March Madness may have been the most exciting piece of the week within this town.
Well, I think a lot of people jumped off, and I can raise my hand because I'm guilty. After they lost to Chicago 4-1, I thought this team as much as they've tried, and we love the effort, we love the fact that they bring up young guys, as much as we wanted them to, I thought that was the tipping point for this club. And then they bounce back and they get an emotional, big-time win against Pittsburgh. They beat Minnesota last night. This is a team that's 8-2 in their last 10 at the Joe. Suddenly, Joe Louis Arena has become more of a home ice advantage for them. I like their chances.
They are fun to watch. Yeah. We've brought this glove out.
That's Ron Guidry, and he was a lefty.
The past 3 weeks, maybe longer, because we knew something was up with Jose Iglesias. Now we find out stress fractures in both feet.
Dog chew that?
You should have brought up
maybe I got hungry along the way.
Instead of a glove.
Look at that. Stephen Drew's the name that everybody wants to get out there. Turned down a lot of money in Boston. Should he be the Tigers' next shortstop, knowing what comes with signing him, losing a first-round draft pick?
I say yes. $14 million 1 year he turned down in Boston. Look, they need some offense. The guy will hit a couple home runs for you a month, solid defensively. If we're not going to lay out big-time money on Scherzer, where's the money coming from? Sure, why not? They got to get a shortstop. If he's the best one available, this is such an important year for the Tigers to go with.
I think he's an underrated glove. I like him, but not for $14 million. I think what he gives you offensively is something that they already have that they could give you offensively. We have to remember that Jose Iglesias was going to bat 8th or 9th in this batting order anyway. So who are you getting? Stephen Drew for $14 million at that spot, who will hit just about the same, just with a little bit extra pop? Give Danny Worth a shot. He's been within your organization. He was a second-round draft pick. He, some say, has the best hands in the organization before they got Iglesias. So you know he can pick it. You know he'll help Castellanos a little bit at third with his range. It's the offense, and he's had a pretty good spring.
1 year. What are you going to do with the $14 million? Sitting in a bank.
Who says you just have to spend it right now?
Someone else we've talked about as the buzzer sounds. Virtually every week we laughed about it when we brought up the topics. And Ndamukong Suh is a guy who's still only under contract for 1 more year. That big cap hit. Is this deal going to get done anytime soon? Should we end this countdown clock or what?
You know what? There's now no rush. You had the whole bit where you're saying they got to get it done, restructured, so they have the money of free agency. That would have been ideal. That's what everyone would have liked to seen. Didn't happen with Ndamukong Suh. It's still sitting out there. Now, what's the rush? They got at least until the draft, so they got to spend money again. I would not have a countdown clock necessarily thinking it's going to be any day.
You talk to agents more than I do. I wonder what athletes, why they play the type of games that they do, and if they wonder at all or worry at all about the backlash from fans. And Ndamukong Suh is one of the best defensive tackles in all of football. You could make a case for Gerald McCoy, who was taken after him in the draft, but he's one of the best defensive tackles in all of football. And I get the sense people don't really know him. We talked to him a lot during the season. People in this town don't know him, and now the perception is that he's a selfish player. I want good players. I think this team needs him to be successful, because if you want to get rid of him and you want to use Nick Fairley and C.J. Mosley as your run stoppers, you're going to be in for a long season. But I do worry about the perception of Ndamukong Suh.
I think the biggest thing from fans is if you're going to get it done,
do it.
Get it done.
Help
Stop
build the team
waiting.
around you.
If you know you want to be here long term, let's go. All right, another big topic in town, the Pistons, except not really a big topic, kind of a forgotten topic. Tom Gores, though, actually spoke to the media in Los Angeles, where the Pistons were. No surprise there. He said last night that the Joe Dumars decision after the season will come quickly. What percentage shot do you give Joe Dumars to be within the Pistons next year? Is that okay? Start and why?
We've been around this.
Yeah.
I mean, this is all something just so people feel like, okay, Joe, it's something we're going to wait till the end of the season. Tom Gores is playing the politically correct game. No one's buying that. Everybody knows that Joe Dumars is done after this season. He's done a lot for the organization, but his last few draft picks, his free agent signings, the fits are not there for this Pistons club. There's no way he'll be back as general manager and president. No
0% chance. Joe Dumars is a class guy. Like you said, done a lot for this organization as a player and executive. Brought him a title as executive, brought 2 as a player. Terrific guy. Deserves to go out in a classy manner. He doesn't need, if you want to give him to the end of the season or whatever the proper protocol is, I have no problem with that. But it's over for the Dumars era, and everybody knows that. I'm pretty sure Joe Dumars.
I'll make this prediction. He resigns before he is fired. I think that's what he'll do. I think he'll say, you know what? My run here has ended. I want to spend some time with my family, take some time off. He'll resign before anyone can fire him.
Not a bad call, especially out of pride and everything he did build with the teams that went to all those Eastern Conference championships.
Sure. But what was interesting is he built those teams in a way that he felt they had pieces that put together that would be winners. Now it seems like he's chasing guys.
Chasing stats.
Brandon Jennings and Josh Smith just do not fit with this team and don't fit together. So it's funny how he's kind of lost his way in that regard.
Without a doubt. One of the biggest things about NCAA tournament play, there are always moments, and it's funny as they come along, you kind of put that checklist together of the one shining moment display at the end of the year. For you so far, Dan, what's been the biggest moment that sticks out to you, your favorite moment of the tournament so far?
You know, my favorite moment's a little unusual, but it was the reaction of the University of Dayton getting to beat the University of Ohio State University, the Ohio State University. They call it. I'm screwing it up. I love the NCAA tournament when the smaller or lesser thought of schools in a state get a chance to play Big Brother. Ohio State will not schedule Dayton. They finally meet in the NCAA tournament. Dayton wins. It's more than just if they had beaten, UCLA or somebody else that they had gotten to beat. They beat Ohio State. The next day, the Dayton Daily News newspaper, front page, the whole banner, the University of Dayton. Great trolling by a newspaper. Love the community trolling. It was great. Yeah. Dayton's now in the Sweet 16. That's my favorite.
It was also a really good game, and I think that's what makes part of those special moments. You could see a team blow another team out and think, wow, that's great. But when it's a lower seed beating a bigger seed and it's a good game, Mercer-Duke, and I know that's the easy one for a lot of people out there because everyone wants to see Duke go by the wayside. But when you see that type of emotion, that type of effort, pretty impressive.
Something cool for me that stuck out real quick. Devin Oliver's sister on Dayton. Down syndrome in the stands. This is his biggest fan. Yeah. Took him to prom. She's in the stands getting interviewed.
So cool.
Part of the moment of what makes this tournament so special. We had never...
Good interview, too.
Great interview.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And it's what makes March Madness so special. Yeah. Well, in the midst of all this news about Max Scherzer, we have a man and a friend on the ground in Lakeland, Florida. James Schmel from the MLive Group is there and will join us next live in the Suburban Ford 7 Sports Cave. Hi, James. In the midst of all today's news on the Suburban Ford 7 Sports Cave, Max Scherzer with the Tigers, contract negotiations done until after the season when he will become a free agent. So when the news broke this morning, we reached out to our friend James Schmel from the MLive Group to hear the very latest. James, thanks for joining us in your fancy backdrop. Surprising.
What a boring spring, huh? This has just been so boring.
Your immediate reaction to just hearing that news when you walked into the office, and how was it even presented to you guys?
Surprising, and I think a lot of people were surprised. I don't think it's necessarily surprising that discussions have ended and in all likelihood Max Scherzer is going to be testing free agency. You know, when Max Scherzer signed with Scott Boras, we kind of knew from the get-go Scott Boras is one of those guys who likes his clients who enter free agency to create bidding wars. We all kind of assumed this was going to happen. I think what was incredibly surprising is that Dave Dombrowski, who is notoriously tight-lipped when it comes to contract negotiations, brought us into Brad's office and basically told us, hey, we offered Max a very substantial offer. He declined it. You rarely ever hear Dave Dombrowski. I don't think I've ever seen him address contract negotiations like this, and it was just an odd move in my mind.
Jason Stark, ESPN, just tweeted out that the deal is an average of $25.5 million a year. Obviously, very substantial. If that's not enough, how close were they on this deal for the fact that it couldn't get worked out, and that the Tigers had pulled the plug on this? We're still 8 days from opening day.
Yeah, well, they had set the deadline at Thursday, this past Thursday. They didn't want to negotiate heading into the final week of the season of spring, only because there's a lot of other items to address. But Dombrowski made it, very well known. This was the best offer we could make. It was a record turn down, as what Dombrowski used. So obviously the Tigers, I think, felt shocked that it was turned down. But again, I don't think they really should feel shocked, knowing that this has kind of been Max's MO and Scott Boras' MO. I think from the very get-go, Max always had in his mind he was going to test free agency. And I guess with that said, so much for the hometown discount.
So, James, you think this is more Max, more Boras, or a combination of both, and this was predetermined that they were going to go through this type of situation no matter what?
Well, Dombrowski first approached Boras about a long-term extension during the winter meetings this past December. Discussions weren't very long. They kind of held off for a little bit, and then they brought it back up during the arbitration process. And at that time, Boris, rather than discuss a long-term extension, said, I only want to settle for a one-year deal for my client. They ended up settling on a $15.5 million deal, which is obviously substantial right there, but it's the arbitration process, you understand. But at that point, Max Scherzer, I think in Scott Boris's mind and Max Scherzer's mind, if he pitches well this season, he's going to head into the offseason as arguably the most premier free agent on the market. I mean, especially with Clayton Kershaw now out of the way, you can suspect that Max Scherzer could somewhat garner a 7-year, $215 million contract similar to what Clayton Kershaw got. So I think that's kind of the approach that they're thinking.
James, you're around Max more than the rest of us. Is this consistent with his personality that he's going to gamble on himself? I mean, he turned down a lot of money guaranteed. Anything can happen in 1 year. Injuries, a poor season, perception, anything. Does it surprise you that he would gamble on himself? And is there a positive to the Tigers that they're getting a guy who has every reason to do everything he possibly can, a highly motivated player to go into this season?
Well, yeah, to answer your first question, this totally fits Max's MO. I mean, he's a competitive guy. He wants to be the best in baseball. He has said, many times in the past, and Scott Boras has repeated it himself when I spoke to Boras, he wants to remain in Detroit. But Boras has said, listen, the Tigers have a track record of signing big free agents on the free agent market. So even if Max Scherzer does enter free agency, the Tigers shouldn't be dissuaded. There's still a chance they could bring him back. But that being the case, Max is one of those guys who's going to take this and run with it. It could potentially motivate him. So for those thinking that there's a chance the Tigers could trade Max Scherzer around the non-waiver trade deadline, you have to remember the Tigers have about $160 million invested in the payroll this year. They're still in a win-now mode, and they want to win this year. That, in my eyes, makes me think there's no point at all in trading Max Scherzer around the non-waiver trade deadline unless they find themselves considerably out of the division race at that point, which I just don't think is going to be the case, even with the injuries that they have right now.
James, thank you so much for joining us, man. A busy day and a busy spring for you. And one last quick question for you, because I already know the answer. How much do you miss me in Lakeland?
Honestly, Brett, not at all. Not at all.
That was the answer I was expecting. Thanks a lot, buddy. We'll talk to you. We'll talk to you when you get back here for opening day.
That's crazy. And if they're looking for Clayton Kershaw money, that's nuts.
But another good year, maybe you're on that length. Like you said, he's 29. He puts together another Cy Young season. Anibal Sanchez is a guy I look at. He went and tested the market. The Tigers went and ended up picking him up and outbid Chicago to keep him.
$16 million compared to 25.
But they're not afraid to let a guy go and go grab him.
Yeah, but it's a huge difference.
He's going to have to improve again. He's going to have to go below 2.9 ERA. He's not going to win. They're not going to get the offensive support. Very hard to win 20 games anymore. His ERA is going to have to go even lower to get that kind of deal. If he's gotten, this was the start of the show. How much did they offer? What was the substantial offer? 25.5 is a lot of money.
We will come back and talk much more about Max, but we next want to touch on the tournament. Your tweets on air, Michigan State. What's the ceiling for them? Will they meet in the finals? Tweet us, #7SportsCave, because we're listening, we're talking. Your tweets drive us on TV. This is Suburban Ford 7 Sports Cave. And asking the question, Michigan State, what is the ceiling for these two teams? Here's a question I posed to the two of you. Looking way ahead, Michigan and Michigan State, say they meet in the final. Is that a good thing for college basketball, to have two teams from the same state playing for the national title?
Yeah, why not? Why can't we join the fray of North Carolina? Let me ask you this. If Louisville and Kentucky would meet, do you think everybody think that would be a really good deal?
It'd be nuts. People would go bonkers.
So why not Michigan and Michigan State?
Absolutely, it'd be great. Louisville and Kentucky met in the Final Four 2 years ago, and it was an epic game. You add the historic rivalry, the extra passion. The Final Four is already great. The title game's already great. But you add something like that to it.
The energy would be unbelievable.
Yeah, the rest of the country would enjoy that. Would you rather watch Duke Carolina play in the finals or Duke play whatever, Arizona? No, you want to see
have to offer it up.
Yeah, you don't have to just be a Michigan or Michigan State fan. And I said this a couple weeks ago on the show. One of the things I really like, I didn't go to either school. I don't have a tie to either school, so it's easy for me to say. But as someone who lives in Michigan, I think it's great when both teams are doing well.
Sure.
And the whole country is looking and saying, hey, look, these schools are doing well. We can be good at college basketball, both schools, as well as the smaller programs.
I've said it for years that these two programs, not just in basketball but in football, can be on equal footing. People didn't want to believe it. Why is it? It's all right, but Syracuse and Connecticut, okay? Big deal, right? St. John's back in the day with Georgetown. You know, we're talking about close rivalries there. Louisville, Kentucky, Duke, North Carolina. Why can't Michigan, Michigan State join that fray? Absolutely they can. Both have fabulous facilities, fabulous coaches, and I think they got great fan bases.
And there's plenty of talent both in the state and in Indiana and Ohio where they're basically getting all their players. There's no reason for this not to be just as good as Tobacco Road. As long as Izzo and Beeline are here, that's what you're going to have.
Agreed.
Yes or no answer. Can it happen?
Yes.
Can they meet in the finals?
Absolutely. Absolutely it can. Yep. Iowa State loses a key member of their team.
I said yes or no.
Okay. Yes. Yes, it can.
Well, when we come back, we're going to take your tweets. We promised you we'd do it. Send us right now. What does it take for Michigan and Michigan State to meet in the finals? #7SportsCave. And we're also going to introduce you to a really, 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 really big guy from Australia who thinks he can play in the NFL. Why?
LeBron James?
David Solano will explain. That music means we're talking sports, and we're inside the Suburban Ford 7 Sports Cave. And you know who else is with us?
Who?
Mike Foss.
Nice.
Still with that really, really cool headset.
Well, that's
Mike,
why he
what's
gets
on
paid the big bucks.
That's right. What's on the computer machine in front of you, sir?
Something like that. A lot of Twitter reaction. People talking Michigan, Michigan State, obviously both very popular picks this year. Let's see what the people are saying. Glenn says he can easily see MSU versus Michigan in the finals. MSU is his choice. Too balanced a team. Mike says go green. Payne is a beast. Lowe says Michigan is the better team in the state, but it's great to see Michigan State make a run too. And Mark says my billion-dollar bracket. Well, nobody's got a billion-dollar bracket anymore, but he's got Michigan over MSU in the finals, 69-66. Go Blue. Guys, back to you.
Who's impressed you more out of these two teams? Because for me, yeah, Michigan's margin of victory has been a little bit higher. They looked better against Texas than Michigan State did against Harvard. Who's impressed you between
Yeah, but
the two?
State looked really good in their first game.
Without a doubt.
So,
and Payne was a monster.
yeah, and how did he just have 12 against Harvard? I'll have no idea. This is going to be part of one of my closing comments is that they're finding different ways to win, and that's what impresses me both.
Hard to say who's more impressive. I guess they're both impressive, but I think I knew how good Michigan was. I'm impressed that Michigan State is continuing the Big Ten tournament role and playing we've continued the level of play that we thought they would have all season.
The Big Ten took a lot of criticism this year for people saying it was
Still
a little
are.
bit overrated. For sure.
Still are, yeah.
These two teams can completely throw that argument out the window.
Well, Wisconsin can too, Brad.
Oh, God, they looked good last night.
They staged a heck of a comeback against a really good club in Oregon, and I know they had, the home court advantage. But you were there, I was there, we both saw it. That's a really good win for Bo Ryan's club. They're not the same Wisconsin team that everybody labels them. Slow it down, let's beat a team 56-52. They can score and they can shoot.
Yeah, they're up-tempo, they're efficient and all that. No, Big Ten's way better than – I don't really know who was criticizing or why, other than it's just
Well,
fun
we
to
got in some
criticize the
debates
Big
with
Ten.
some guys.
But
they think it's the Big 12, which, the Big 12's good. I think Iowa State's a good club, Kansas is a good club. Oklahoma was third in their
Big 12
conference
has
or
one
something like
team.
that, and they got pounded earlier this year. Louisiana Lafayette beat them
Big
for crying
12
out
has
loud.
Kansas, and then that's it. Every year. They have Kansas.
Iowa
and
State's
everyone-
pretty good, Dan.
Yeah, well, they're
This
in
year.
Iowa State
This is when it counts. The
Right.
tournament is when it counts.
Right.
It doesn't matter when you're
DeAndre
beating
Kane's
up
an
each other.
All-American. I mean, he's a good player.
It doesn't matter when you're beating each other up and you say, oh, this team's losing to this team. Ohio State's no good. This is when it counts. Michigan, Michigan State, and Wisconsin are all
Well, let
proving
me
it.
ask you this. Does the Big 12 take a hit because Oklahoma lost to North Dakota State?
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Sure, why
I mean,
All right, well, there's that really strong guy we were telling you about, not LeBron James. He works out in Bloomfield
He
Hills.
could make the NBA, NFL.
He could do whatever he wants. And people who pass this guy by can't help but wonder what his story is. Because he's big and he's a former powerlifting champion. His name, Dwayne Johnstone. He's trying to crack the NFL. Good luck telling him he's not going to get there. David Solano has more with the monster from Down Under.
Okay, well, thanks, guys. We're here with Dwayne Johnstone from Melbourne, Australia. But you know what? Before we get started, he goes by G. Why do you go by G?
Just easier. People can't mix up the name. So one letter, so hopefully can't mix that up.
I think one of the unique storylines, too, with you is I was told that you are here on your own dime. There's really nobody helping you but yourself.
My first trip here was actually in 2011. I came over, had the opportunity to meet different colleges, obviously introduce myself to those coaches, and just have a chat and go through the recruiting process, being the first time, not really having I guess, a background of knowledge and that sort of thing.
Did anybody ever make offers?
Not until further down the track. None of those schools really did. I mean, they offered me walk-on opportunities. But being an international student, the finances of the whole thing are just mind-boggling. Like, local students wouldn't have any idea really of how much extra you've got to pay. So it just wasn't an option. The regional combine on March 30 is what I just got accepted into doing. Hopefully I get to showcase my athleticism. Sit. Yeah, the Super's here in Detroit at Ford Field. I understand that there's a process that's involved. Kind of go against the grind, go against the naysayers that sort of had some words to say to me about why I couldn't play college football. So
just to know that you're instrumental in his development, trying to get him ready for the regional combine. And what does that mean to you, Zach?
It's awesome to help people chase after dreams and hopefully change their lives. But drop the hips, stay low, big strides. He's explosive. Get feet up, turn and go. Obviously with his powerlifting background, he's been very successful at being explosive and strong. Not a boy. I think he'd be one of the strongest guys in the league stepping on the field for the first time.
Come see me in person and tell me right here that I'm not athletic enough to play this game at the highest level.
He's a big, strong man. He's going to be able to sit down. He's going to be able to anchor. He's going to be able to hold his own in space. And he's going to be able to move people off him when he needs to.
So I think with that said, Zach, Coach Caldwell and company, if you're watching, there is a guy named G from Melbourne, Australia. You may want to take a look at if you have some room for him on the roster.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks again, Zach. We appreciate it.
Yep.
Good soundbite, huh?
I'm not
Love to do the interviews.
Dare to dream. Dare to dream.
Why not?
Why not? For sure. Tweets coming in. Max Scherzer addressing the media down in Lakeland. Let's pull it up and show you what he's saying just as they come in. Scherzer, I know we have a great thing here. I'm not saying the grass is greener on the other side, but I want to play this out.
Fine. You know what? He's gambling on himself. I have no problem with that.
Yeah, but fans, popular opinion, not a good move on his part, because fans right now are saying, oh yeah, if it's not always greener, then why don't you sign right now? How much money do you really need?
It'll be an interesting year. A lot of pressure on him. When we come back, we're going to have our final thoughts from the entire week of sports, maybe longer, things that we've been chewing on and we want to share with you. But first, each week our friends at State Champ Sports Network provide us with a high school play of the week. This week, the jam-packed weekend of state titles. Class D basketball, Southfield Christian taking on Adrian Lenawee. That's Southfield's Bakari Evelyn lays it in and drives, and that's Lindsey Hunter IV. He's got good company with that name, and so does the trophy that his team won. Back-to-back champions from Southfield Christian. Pretty good stuff. Congrats to everybody for the winners, and thanks to State Champs. We'll be right back. We've heard from you. You've heard from us. We're going to wrap things up with our final thoughts of what we've been thinking about this week and what we want to close the show out with. Matt, you're up first.
Too many times we label teams, we label players. We didn't think Michigan State could win a high-scoring game because it's a team that has been built on rebounding and defense. We didn't think Michigan could win on defense because they're a finesse club, and yet they hold Wofford, their first-round opponent, to just 40 points, an NCAA tournament record for Michigan. The Spartans go out and they're rolling with 90-plus points in these NCAA tournament games, or some of them anyway, and a lot of it has to do with coaching. Instead of labeling, we need to look at these teams for what they are and who they are. Coaching comes back in so many different situations to the key success, and the Red Wings are experiencing it as well with Mike Babcock right now. He's got a team that is full of Riley Sheehan and Thomas Tatar and Thomas Yurko and guys that you had never heard of until this year, and look at what they're doing. They're in the hunt for that final playoff spot. It's all based on leadership. Leadership from Nicholas Cronwall, leadership from Ken Holland. It's something that the Pistons, in the meantime, lack. Pieces that are not fitting together. They need to find that guy to wear a crown, lead the way, and others will follow. While Michigan, Michigan State, and the Red Wings all have it, whether they win or not, the Pistons have been sorely lacking that for a long time and need to correct that problem as quickly as possible.
From madness in-house to madness of the game we've been watching this whole week. Dan?
If your NCAA brackets look anything like mine, well, you aren't about to become a billionaire. That doesn't mean billions isn't being won or lost on the tourney. It's just not legal. America's inconsistent gambling laws mean you can play a mindless game such as Keno or scratch tickets, but unless you're in Nevada, you can't use your brain to bet on sports. State of New Jersey is currently suing the federal government to change that. Talk about an underdog worth rooting for. If Jersey wins, then sports wagering could ripple across the country, including here in Michigan. There's no common sense argument against legalization. Currently, billions in revenue go untaxed through what is often organized crime or offshore internet sites. And legal betting, law enforcement says, actually makes it easier to catch point shaving because everything is in the open. Besides, imagine how much fun the early rounds of the NCAA would be from a Vegas-style sports book built in one of our Detroit casinos here. Same with NFL Sundays or college football Saturdays. In the end, this is about revenue, and not just jobs and taxes. Think about how much money we could have made legally around here in the last few decades if we'd just been able to bet against the Lions.
Well, this time of year, we've grown accustomed to a few upsets in the NCAA tournament, but in recent years, the teams that were supposed to win it all have won it all. This season, it's been a different story. Cinderella's closet opened up, and apparently there's more than one glass slipper. CBS and Turner announced the first wave of games made for the most watched Thursday in 23 years. The big conferences keep getting bigger, the rich keep getting richer, but with everyone in America watching on the edge of their seats, this tournament has thrilled us. The small schools beating the juggernauts, David keeping their toppling over Goliath. It reminds us why sports captivate us and captivate our attention, and why this time of year can really be so special. The Final Four may well be composed of big-time programs, but for as long as the little guys take us, it's fun to go along for the ride and take back the tournament, one Cinderella at a time. Thank you so much for watching. Dan, Matt, it's always been fun joining along you guys. Matt, to have you on us the first time.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for interacting with us. You can keep the conversation flowing all week. Dan Wetzel's on Twitter, so is Chef Matt. I am Brad Galley. Interact with us throughout the week, and we'll be here next week for a big, big show as Michigan and Michigan State roll on to the Sweet 16. This is the Suburban Ford 7 Sports Cave. Have a great Sunday, everybody.